I'm Elizabeth Roof, and I'm at the Vanderbilt Kennedy Center, and I've been working with kids and adults with Prader-Willi syndrome since 1995. So I work with Elizabeth Dykins, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the behavioral issues that go along with PWS. So I kind of picked the top 5, and I will try to be quick so we can have our Q&A. And so my thought is when you guys have questions, you can probably just ask me at the Q&A, but I'll focus on things like anxiety and some of the other behavior issues that are common in PWS. So one thing I want to say is everyone comes up and they say, my kid's doing X, okay? So there's a great deal of variety in the phenotype of PWS. So not every kid is doing the same thing, and sadly, because of the internet, every kid who's doing badly, their parent posts in like great detail all the troubles they're having. And for parents who are worried that my kid is going to go down this road, just realize there are a lot of kids doing a lot of different things. And I think the fact that Jennifer focused on the fact that there are a lot of kids doing really well, I think is really important. There's a lot of variety. People often don't know their kid's subtype. When you have little kids, you all know it, but I have people who have adults and they're like, I don't know what his subtype is. Does that matter? It matters a whole lot. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the subtype differences. And if you have family mental health issues, we always do a really full psychiatric interview as part of our study. That matters. So if you are struggling with depression or anxiety or other kinds of things, realize that that's superimposed on top of PWS, and so they're already kind of prone to some of these psychiatric issues. And if you have some of those issues, it's important to know that sometimes your kid will have sometimes more of those issues. So some of the subtype differences we know, if you have a deletion, you're more likely to have skin picking. They're often really good with jigsaw puzzles, which I just always have found fascinating. Years ago, we had these little jigsaw puzzles. One had a face on it, one was a white puzzle with no picture on it, and one was a face but only had like 4 pieces. So kids with deletion could put the white puzzle together almost as fast as they could put one with a picture on it. My 2 kids were the control subjects, and my son said, this is the meanest thing you've ever made me do. So the idea is that they have some real strengths there. They're often good with directions and memory. If you have a little kid, they will often, especially with the deletion, they'll sometimes know where they are based on what they see going out the window, going by them. They have a good visual memory, and so they'll know things that sometimes other kids won't remember. And if you have an adult with Prader-Willi, they will remember things that happened 15, 20 years ago with such detail, you'll think it just happened. For people who have deletion, sometimes behavior seems to mellow as they age, which is a really good thing because as a lot of parents say, where are we now? Where are we in this cycle? So I'm always like, 20 to 29 is about the age that we see some of these behaviors. By the ends of the 20s are starting to get better. And food issues for people with deletion are usually bigger than behavior issues. So again, there are some subtype differences. If you have UPD or imprinting mutations, more autism features, definitely more common. Better verbal skills, as I always say, they're all meant to be lawyers. They will argue to the absolute nth degree about almost anything, but they also get more stuck and argumentative. Risk for psychosis is definitely higher. It is not as high as some of the European studies which said like 80% of all people with UPD are going to have psychosis. Definitely not true, but there definitely is higher. And you need to know what the warning signs are because I tell you, it's like when people call, even over the phone, if I've never met your kid, we can often see that they're either there or it's on its way. So, and in this population, behavior issues are definitely bigger than food issues. I'm not saying they don't have food issues, but people will often say that I'm struggling more with some of the behavior issues for kids with UPD. So some of the behavioral features of PWS, food interest and hyperphagia. So these are like the 5 or 6 things I'm going to talk about. Anxiety, stubbornness, need for control, perseveration and getting stuck, oppositional, argumentative, and need for sameness. So there's varying amounts of these features in every kid. So it's kind of like a puzzle. You have all these different pieces. This has them all the same, but in your puzzle, for your kid, the pieces are all going to be slightly different things. Environment, parenting can change the picture dramatically. It's a lot about fit. If you're a highly reactive parent, if you're really temperamental and reactive, you will have lots of issues with your kid with PWS because they're also highly reactive and temperamental. Anxiety and PWS. Sometimes it looks like worry. It is almost always a constant need for reassurance. When are we going to do this? What are we going to do next? Who's going to do that with me? Is there? If you're not tired of listening to questions and your kid is 6, I don't know who you are because most of my parents say, oh my God, I cannot listen to any more questions. Why? What? Who? So questions about schedules and expectations. Again, what's going to happen next? How is it going to be? You know, they need lots and lots of reassurance about those things. Some of the things that we also see, it can even like gravitate towards physical agitation. I see lots of kids rocking, fidgeting, rubbing, lots of kind of visual agitation. That is also anxiety. And what happens when anxiety kind of doesn't get, kind of solved? It can lead to tearfulness. We have lots of kids who will cry. They'll get so upset or frustrated about something, they'll start to cry. Uncooperative behavior. I can't move on, so you can't make me. And I watch parents go, we'll just go over here, or we'll just... That's not going to work generally. And again, that's because they're very anxious and they don't want to be told what to do. It can lead to aggressive behaviors. People don't link aggression to anxiety, but it's almost always a path to, I'm very anxious, I'm very worried, I'm very stuck, and once it continues, they become aggressive. Once they get to the point where they're shutting down, I tell people, especially if you have a kid who will go somewhere. We had a girl one time who laid in the middle of the street. She was very upset about something. We get about halfway across the street, and she just lays down at an intersection in front of the hospital. And her mom is trying to coax her to get up. She's about 15 at that point, and she's trying to explain to her. And I walk over, and I said, "What's wrong? Did you fall?" She goes, "I want a cookie." I go, "A cookie?" She goes, "Yeah, give me a cookie, and I'll get up." I go, "Do I look like I have a cookie on me? We're in the middle of the street." And her mom says, "Give her a cookie." I go, again, no cookie on me. So we walked across the street, just left her laying there, and within seconds, she's up. "I hate you." Yeah, I know. But we got a treadmill test we got to get to. So and her mom said, "How did you know she was going to get up?" I said, "I didn't exactly know at this point. I had just started in PWS World, and I did know." But again, what we found is that when she started to shut down, talking to her, arguing with her, reasoning with her, none of that stuff works. You really have to just kind of get up and move on. And again, when they get to that point of shutting down, a lot of times it's like a computer. I don't know if you've ever called the IT guy. What does he always say? "Did you turn it off and turn it back on?" No, I had never heard that before. Shutting down is a way for them to basically reboot, and they'll often get upset, they'll cry, they'll, kind of yell, and then all of a sudden it's quiet. And sometimes they go to sleep. And sometimes they get up and they're like, "Hey, Mom." Get up, they're all good. You're like, it's like a hurricane has just happened, and they walk up and they're like, "What are you talking about? I don't see the problem." They have literally rebooted, like your computer. They're able to run all the programs now that they weren't able to just a little bit ago. So I tell people, when they shut down, you just have to let it happen. At that point, there's no way to do it. Some of the ways to deal with anxiety, we're big believers that visual schedules help people mentally prepare for events. What's going to happen next? It's not about rigidity, it's really about the kind of progression of events. We do it for our lab, we do it for all the things that we do, even fun things. If we're going to go to the zoo with 20 people with PWS, we have visual schedules, we lay out the expectations, and we tell people what's going to happen. We compartmentalize. If you spend all day answering your kids' questions about schedules, let me tell you, it does not end. I had a woman who said, "Well, I'm homeschooling my kid because she couldn't handle being in school because she asked so many questions." I was like, "How's that going for you at home?" She goes, "Well, she probably asked me 200 to 300 times a day questions about what's going to happen next." And I was just like, and let me guess, you answer them because you think to yourself, if I say it with the right words, with the right tone, with the right fill in blank, she will get it. And she said, "Yeah." I go, "Does she ever stop?" She said, "No, I really want to kill her most days." And I said, right. So I was modeling how you do that. And one of it is basically having limits of questions to 3. She's really high functioning. I mean, she's probably smarter than I am. And she kept kind of like trying to trick me. She said, "So we're going to see the doctor at 9. "Yep, Kayla, doctor we're going to see at 9. That's how it's going to be." She goes, I said, "But I'm only going to answer your questions 3 times. And she just kind of like looks at me and she goes, "What?" I go, 3 times, that's all I do. Second time, she says, "So we're going to see the doctor at 9, is that right?" "Yep, second time, 9 o'clock. I love this. The third time, I said, "Well, I'm just going to have you repeat it to me. What time are we seeing the doctor?" 9 o'clock, great. Within seconds, she lifts her head up and she goes, we're seeing the doctor at 10. And I just smiled at her and said, "I've already answered your question 3 times. And I told the mom, I said, "It works." Was she happy? No. Did she deal with it? Yes. So the deal is you have to find ways to limit it. They never stop if you keep answering. It becomes a very compulsive behavior. Rituals to manage some of these anxieties, fidgets, you can rub their hair. There's lots of things that will kind of help them manage some of that anxiety. And I'll talk a little bit about mantras, which I'm a big believer. If you have phrases that your kid knows, I know what this means. The expectations are clear. So visual schedules help people move forward. They give people the steps in order, a concrete reminder. I had a girl who was washing her hair in the shower probably 30, 40 times before she got out. There was no hot water. The Costco bottle of shampoo was empty. And her parents were crazy, and her hair was literally like an afro because she was just like washing it over and over. And I said, Holly, I got to ask you, why do you wash your hair over and over? She said, well, I can't remember if I've done it. Really? 40 times and you can't remember that? So we put one of these in the thing, and once she checked it off with her little China marker, little like grease pen, she couldn't, like literally, she had a Dixie cup full of shampoo, and that was it. It helped her get out of the shower. It gives people a sense of accomplishment. She knew when it was done because she'd marked it off. And again, for you, when they ask you a question, refer to your schedule. What's the schedule say? Do not answer over and over. They almost always know the answer. Compartmentalize anxiety. Do not give too much information or give it too soon. We have people who come to Nashville and literally they throw their kid in the car that morning and the kid doesn't even know where they're going. Because if you say, hey, we're going to go see Elizabeth on Friday, oh my God, all week long. So are we going to have strawberry shortcake bandages like last time? Is she going to? Oh. So don't give them too much information. Give time limits. I do. I literally look at my watch and go, you've got a minute to talk about Annie or whatever you want to talk about. And then at the end of the time, I go, great, we're done. And do not bring it up again. You have to limit it. They can't. I had a kid who was very anxious. He was like the, narc police of his high school. He was constantly having to complain about people running in the halls, people, whatever. And his guidance counselor was spending 3 to 4 hours a day dealing with his, constant complaints of other students who were not following the rules. This kid threw a computer out of a window one time, so hey, we won't even talk about him. But he seemed to notice what everybody was doing. We gave him a suggestion box. He would copiously write these little things down, and he put them in, and the guidance counselor said, what should I do with the suggestion box? I go, if you want to know what all your students are doing, read it. If you don't care, throw it in the trash can, recycle it, whatever. You can give kids who are a little bit older journaling. They can write some of these anxieties and fears down so they actually have a way to kind of deal with them. We've been doing our social skills group online. If any of you have heard of it for teens and adults with Prader-Willi syndrome, but it's a online 10-week, 3 times a week social skills group where they come in, they're in a group. It's like a Skype. It looks like little Brady Bunch tiles where everybody's face is on. And one of the things we've been working on is taking 3 deep breaths to calm yourself before you respond. They really love that, but it is a great way to get them to kind of ratchet it down a notch, count to 10. I'm big about saying, we're going to go with the flow today. We're just going to see what happens. A little change will do you good. Baby steps are really good for PWS and change. You can't go, okay, now we're going to completely change the rules because they will flip out. But what you can do is actually make little changes. And we used to always say that following a schedule and doing all these things is a really good idea. Now that we're seeing people in their 20s and 30s, we're seeing people who are so rigid who literally flip out about going. I had a kid who, on the interstate, got out of the car because his mom stopped and there was some accident. And he goes, well, what's going on? She goes, I don't know. He just gets out of the car and starts running down the interstate. And the mom says, oh, my God. He was so flipped out about it. So she said, well, what should we do? I said, next time put Marilyn T-Dot or whatever on your phone and call him and find out what the deal is. She goes, what are you talking about? I go, you don't have to call them. You just have to pretend you're calling them, and you have to have some details. And once she did that to him, he was perfectly happy about that. So the idea is that we have to find ways for them to manage some of those anxiety and to take baby steps. If you give them a heads up, hey, it's raining today, so the zoo is not an option, they can deal with that. Again, you don't have to give lots and lots of explanation. You just have to tell them it's going to happen. Brandon is one of the guys that just graduated out of our first group, and he loves 3 deep breaths. He says it all the time. So what should we do here? 3 deep breaths. Okay, Brandon, that's one thing we could do. What could we do next? But they're learning to actually manage some of their expectations, empathy, things like that. And it's really cool to see that their parents are saying that. She said, my daughter was about to just let loose, and she goes, 3 deep breaths, 3 deep breaths. And she started going, she was sucking in all the air from the room. And she said, but at the end of it, she got so distracted by doing that, she was able to actually manage herself. And when they're telling us, they're able to calm down. Too many questions, driving you crazies. This is a way to process stressful events. And we think of these events as being everyday things. But for them, they're very stressful. They become a very compulsive behavior. The more you answer them, the more they ask. We have lots of parents who say, asked and answered, done, not doing it. Ask them the question. 100 times out of 100, they know the answer and can repeat it verbatim. But you saying it in the same tone, with the same words, in the same way, makes them feel calm. That's great for them, but not so great for you. So again, I always do the 3 responses and I'm done. You can also have them or you write down the response, and every time they ask, you go, there it is. What does that say? There you go. We've got it. Those things are really good. So when anxiety leads to tears, I tell people tears are okay. They're basically a way to kind of help reset your child. I was actually in British Columbia a couple months ago, and there was a therapist talking about how tears basically kind of reset. And I mean, I know that, but when she talked about the physiological kind of mechanism, it made a lot of sense to me. Give them a safe place to talk or vent. Be empathic. I always tell people, I know you're upset. I know that you're hurt. I know this isn't what you wanted to have happen. Just, again, validate their feelings. It's okay to say, I know you're feeling this way, and then give them time to get over it. I always tell people, tears are better than anger, and kids who are tearful generally don't tend to lash out. Kids who lash out generally don't tend to cry. So don't worry if your little boy is upset and they're 13 and they literally have tears coming down their face. It's an okay thing because it means they're able to kind of deal with some of the anxiety and get it out. When anxiety leads to aggression, it can really be a huge problem. Again, it's usually like yelling, kind of throwing things. They'll throw things and kind of like watch you. What are you going to do? What about now? I'm going to swing out at you. Again, don't get too close. I have people who want to get in their face and physically redirect. Disastrous idea. Give them space to vent. Again, validate behavior and not emotions. I often say, when people cut me off in traffic, I get very angry and frustrated. Do I ram my small Prius into their big Ford F-150? I do not. But that's the thing. You can validate the feelings without validating the behavior. There is no need to rehash or teach a lesson. I love those parents. This is a teaching moment. Really? Because what are they going to learn from that? When they come out of that hurricane, kind of shutdown, and they get out and they're all good, well, here, we're going to talk about this thing that happened. I have had kids completely lose their mind within minutes of the parents or teachers saying, well, I sure hope we don't have a problem like we had yesterday. Really? What are you doing? So again, once they do it, I don't talk about it again because they do not learn. And that's what's so interesting about our social skills group. They do not learn from punishment or any of these other things. You just have to keep doing it and doing it. And I do have kids who become adults who will say, it's like their parents. You can hear that voice in their head. I should calm myself down before I do something crazy. I mean, they're basically repeating those things. And as they get older, we are having kids who are able to do those things. But just know, talking about it or teaching a lesson just doesn't work. You manage the behavior in the moment, and you try to keep making sure that you're consistent so that it doesn't happen over and over. Shutting down. Emotions are too high. People often say, it's like nobody's home, man. I'm talking to my kid. There's like the eyes are black, and there's just like nobody's controlling anything. They often won't respond, and they often collapse on the floor. I have parents who say, well, I dragged my child up to timeout, and it was like, no, just leave them. If they're collapsed on the floor, walk over them, walk around them, as long as everybody's safe, but don't give them attention. The more you are sitting there going, okay, so here's what's going to happen next, that is not going to help anything. And if in public, just again, make sure they're safe, make sure that you're monitored. If you can find a way for them to kind of safely kind of decompress, do that. But no, it is not something you're going to be able to redirect at that point. Being proactive and not reactive. Have a plan, prepare for the unexpected, and have a backup plan. I have parents who go out into the world with their child with PWS, and they're like, well, I don't know how things are going to go today. Be clear about what the expectations are. We're going to do this. This is what you're going to do. This is what mom's going to do. This is how things are going to go. Have your child repeat it back to you. How's the plan going to go? What's going to happen? Follow the plan and execute it as best you can to the plan. And don't be rattled by an argument. I love when they'll get you out somewhere, like especially a place where there may be food, or at least there's a way for them to get attention. And they start, Mom, I wanted to know if maybe I could. No, shut it down. You even say, we've planned this all out. We're not going to talk about this. So the idea is you have to have a plan. And if by chance your plan goes bad, you better have an exit strategy of how you're going to get out of there. Because don't let them get you over a barrel and you're like, I don't want all my church friends to be looking at me and thinking I'm not a very good parent. Because again, that kid goes, I gotcha. Oppositional behavior. Most kids with PWS almost always have to say no before they say yes. I never ask them a question if I don't want the answer to be no. So don't ask. People go, do you want to put on your shoes now? No. Well, we really need to get on shoes on. Can we put on shoes? No. And then they throw their shoes. And I'm like, why are you doing that? I always say, man, time to get your shoes on so we can go have a snack and go on the playground. And they're like, ooh. So, again, cooperative language. We're going to do this, as I always tell my kids, because I use this with I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. My kid goes, Mom, why do you always say we're going to take out the cat litter, which really means I'm going to take out the cat litter? I said, because it doesn't sound like I'm bossing you around. He said, yeah, but the input is the same. But for people with PWS, how you ask it is so very important. So again, tell people, it's not about you. Do not personalize this behavior. Give them 2 choices so they don't get stuck. Find ways to say yes. I have kids at 8:30 who go, oh, Elizabeth, I am so hungry. I'm ready to have lunch. I go, wow, it's 8:30 and we've got these 5 things to do and I can't wait to eat lunch either. So let's just go ahead and get it all done so we can do that. So they're able to hear yes instead of no. Parents often say no and think that that's going to work well. It doesn't. And again, you have to have firm limits and you have to find a way to say yes. And again, don't ask a question if you don't want no for an answer, because parents constantly are giving their kids so much power to turn them down, and you don't want to do that. I always think PWS should be perseveration well syndrome. They're so good at it. When they want to talk about something, they will talk about it as long as you will let them. You are the limiting factor here. I have parents who spend hours talking about the weirdest subjects that their kid is interested in. They're like, well, but that's not a healthy thing. And we've noticed in our social groups, we have 2 sessions where they run their own. Watching those sessions is maybe the funniest thing I've ever seen. There's 1 or 2 people who have to keep asking questions or saying the same thing over and over, and the other kids are going, Elizabeth's going to watch this. Please stop doing this. It's like they get that there's always one person who's kind of waylaying the group. So time limits, topic limits, lightning round. I tell people, ask me 3 questions. Go. All right? Yes. 7. We're done. Don't let them get stuck. They will do it as long as you let them. So again, it's important to have some limits there. I tell people, you're the king of sales. You are always selling what it is you want them to do. So think about your audience. What do they want? Think about your affect, your tone of voice. I always tell people, I had somebody who worked for Jen also worked for me, and I'll never forget, there's all this noise and commotion, and things are obviously not good. The parent knocks on the door, she goes, hey, how are things going? And Krista comes out, she's like, it's been great. We're just having a great time exploring the environment, doing all these assessments. And I walk in there and I said, oh my God, it's just like things look like they're just like thrown everywhere. She said, well, it's like the flight attendant, man. The plane's going down, but we're all good. Everybody's great. So again, think about your tone, think about your pitch. What is good for the person you're trying to deal with? What do they want? How can everybody get some of what they want? And stop talking and negotiating. People talk too much to their kid. If I reason with them and explain logically, kids with Prader-Willi are not logical often. They really have very unreasonable expectations. Believe in yourself. If you think that you can handle things, more often you will than not. Be confident in your skills and practice them daily and find ways to learn and adapt. I have parents who go, well, Elizabeth, we figured it out. We've got a behavior plan in place and everything's great and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, great, that's awesome until something else happens. And they're like, wait, what? It's like driving a car. If I sit my hands at 10 and 2 and just drive down the road, I'm going to hit somebody or run off the road. The road changes, things change, so you're going to have to adapt to that. So it's important to believe in yourself and know that you have the skills and that you are strong enough to be able to do it. I always tell people, we learn way more from them than they do for us. As my 2 kids will often say, you're so nice to other people's kids, but you're not very nice to us. I said, that is true, but I said, sadly, I use it up at work, and I come home and I got nothing left. So again, it's really important to know that they will teach you patience, they'll teach you humility, they'll teach you skills that you never thought you would have, but it's really important to kind of know they're not put on this earth to learn all this information and do algebra. They're here to mold us into really, I think, better people. So I want to thank all my PWS families that come from all over the country and Canada to come see us, because honestly, following 300 people with PWS, though exhausting at times, has really been one of the most fun things I've ever done. So I want to thank all of our families. That's all I have.